How are you guys doing? I will be talking about how to use the NASCAR DFS tools that we have here at TrueDFS. Past that, or what this video will mainly be broken into two factors. One, I'll be discussing the problems, the hurdles, everything that we're looking to solve with these tools, and then secondly, I'll be showing you how to use them. If you want access to the NASCAR tools, if you want access to SaberSim through us, if you want access through or to the PayDirt analytic tools that we also are partnered with, you can get them through any of these packages. Now, I highly recommend the TrueDFS plus SaberSim Ultimate package because not only do you get SaberSim Ultimate, the contest sims and everything along that nature that SaberSim has, you also get all of our projections that we have, Goldie's sheets, my stuff for NASCAR, and then you also get the PayDirt analytics tools. Now, you can have the PayDirt analytics tools through the SaberSim Starter, through the TrueDFS Core, either one of those, but the fact that we have multiple tools for every single sport, I mean, if you're getting this, you're basically paying for three sites in one with everything that we offer here, and then obviously the NASCAR package. If you just want that, it's $40 a month due to everything that we are adding on to NASCAR and all the work that Astukas has done to get this thing looking amazing. So first and foremost, now yet again, I'm recording this on Friday, May 2nd. This is obviously before the truck race, but this isn't necessarily a breakdown of the truck race. It's just showing what is being shown on the screen, okay? And so when we enter a weekend, okay, and you enter a situation to where maybe you potentially want to do research on what the track is going to be. Now, yet again, I'm using, for example, the truck dashboard here, but the Xfinity dashboard, and the Cup Series dashboard offer the exact same tabs and the same information that is being displayed here. Obviously, it'll change, series by series, but what is being shown here is shown in all three series. You can also always go to the About page here, and I know this is a little small, so we're gonna. I have a huge monitor, but I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in so you can see what all this is saying here, and maybe you can't see all of it, but I will read you through it. So basically, what the About page will show is the data filters applied. So yet again, this is Astucas's own data that he pulls from, that he uses in his own sims and stuff like that, and I have asked him to go ahead and make it into a preview for our subscribers on the website. And so this shows what, basically what the tracks are, what he's looking at. Now this varies, week into week, because obviously we're at a different track each week. Sometimes we're at a intermediate, a super speedway, a road course, whatever. But you can always go to the About page and see what tracks are being used for the primary tracks, for the similar track types, for the date ranges that we're using here. As we go through and talk about all of these, I'll explain to you why certain tabs use more tracks than other ones and stuff like that, but you can always go here and see what tracks are being used, okay? So first and foremost, the way that Astukas likes to look at data points is based on contests, okay? Now, what I mean by that is I mean the actual physical DraftKings CSV contest results that we're looking at. And so when we're looking at, or when he's previewing races, and we're looking at dominator analysis, when we're looking at place differential, when we're looking at scoring ranges here, he is focused on the tracks that have the same amount of laps and or similar laps and similar track types. And so what I mean by that is, like this weekend, for example, Texas has more laps than the average intermediate track for the series because Texas pays more money. Texas is one of the bigger paying races of the season. So for trucks, normally they run 137 laps. I believe this weekend they're running 167, and so on and so forth. Typically, we see 250 for Xfinity. I believe this week it's 300, and so on and so forth. And so Texas on its own carries, 30 more laps, or 37 more laps. That's 30-ish more fast laps, 30-ish more, laps, lead points, and so on and so forth. And so when we're looking at that, we then have to be aware of what, or at least, what these contests are looking at. And so, like, for example, right, like when we're looking at races here and we're looking at race summaries, okay, these are the last 4 Texas races here. So instead of going to like racing reference, for example, maybe you're starting your research for a week. And I mean, some people still use Wikipedia. I have no idea why you would use that, but maybe you don't want to go through Racing Reference and open up 15 tabs. Maybe you don't want to go through driveraverages.com. Maybe you just don't like other data sets. Well, first and foremost, here are your last 4 Truck Series races. You can see how many cars there were. You can see if there was qualified, and you can see how many leaders we had, the amount of cautions, green flag laps, dominator points available in this race, the amount of people finishing on the lead laps, the amount of crashes due to DNFs, and then the amount of mechanical failures in these races to give you a quick idea of what happened in these races. We can also move to the Dominator Analysis tab. So this gives you the top DK scoring drivers by the fast laps and laps led points in these races of these last 4 races. As I said, or as I stated, because we're looking at this, we're looking at the um, last 4 races at Darlington, and then similar track types as well. Because, like, obviously we're looking at all the Darlington races, Rockingham, Texas. We are also looking at these are the similar track types that Astukas has decided to look at here. And why are they listed here? Well, you're going to notice that they have very similar laps led, a potential, or not laps led, but very similar total laps in these races here, and they perform very similar in terms of what he's looking for in races here. When we look at the scoring ranges of these drivers here, okay, so obviously when a slate is over, you obviously have the highest scorer, second highest scorer, third, so on and so forth. We can then go ahead and look at the ranges that these individual ranks end up having. Now, yet again, this is not the true DraftKings points. Those will be the scoring ranges here. This is just focusing on what your dominators are doing in these races, okay, and what you can expect here. And if you continue to go down, you can see where people score. You can also zoom in on a section of the graph if you want to left click and then drag over. You can then, specifically, like, say if we want to look at the points distribution for the sixth dominator on average in these races, which yet again, that's why I don't like using the term dominator, because if you're sixth, what is your max here if you were the sixth best ranked dominator? Well, it was 8.4 points, median was 2.88, so on and so forth. But it'll give you an idea of where these guys go. And yet again, this can be for all 3 series when we're looking at the dashboards here. When we look at the finish ranges for these, where did these guys finish? This could potentially show you that, wherever the dominators finish, right? It's pretty self-explanatory. If you're going through and you understand what you're looking at here, you could see where people are being thrown out. Now, yet again, this could show where people either ran into issues, where they maybe they led early, got wrecked out, so on and so forth. Maybe you're just like, you're the 6th guy there. So obviously, like, if you're on average the ranked number 1 dominator, you probably won the race realistically because you had the best car, right? So your outcomes from winning the race at first to finishing in the top 10 is pretty likely. Same thing with second, third, fourth. Yet again, I use 6 for an example. When we look at the scoring ranges here, obviously we're looking at 6 carrying very little dominator points. 8 points as a max, 2.88 as a median. Obviously, we're not having a lot of points given here. That could just be scraping off some fast laps. Maybe you potentially led a few laps, whatever the case may be. Well, that outcome for that rank for that driver is all over the place. Obviously, there's been races where they've won. There's been races where they finished 32nd, so on and so forth. Median range, you're finishing 6th, and so on. So this will give you an idea of where your lap leaders are finishing. You could also look at where these dominator points are versus finishing position. Now, yet again, this is just laps led and fast lap points. Where are these points being distributed? Typically, you're going to see them finish first or carry a lot of these points first and second, because obviously those are the drivers who are most likely leading these races, most likely getting to the end and winning the races, and so on and so forth. When we look at the laps led by finishing position, okay, yet again, very similar. Now, I like to look at this. Now, I know it's not exactly this, because obviously we're kind of working backwards here. What we're showing here is how many laps did the finishing positions lead in this race. Obviously, typically, if you are winning the race, you're leading laps. Okay, now it doesn't always last that, or it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you can have a bad restart or something to happen towards the end of the race. But this also gives you a good idea of where fast laps, or at least laps led, are coming from. Okay, if we notice, nobody truly, outside of situations where, they lead and then they wreck out or whatever. Obviously, we have a situation here where somebody led 168 laps in a race and finished 16th. Okay, obviously, your main lap leader wrecked out or had something happen to him. But usually, this will help you understand where the laps led are coming from, because, hey, typically, if you're a fast car and you're able to finish up front, you're probably going to carry fast. You're probably going to carry laps, let fast laps. Same with fast laps too. Now, yet again, since fast laps aren't always a one-to-one for the leader, you see them spread out a little bit more. But yet again, this can give you a good idea of where fast laps are being distributed in the field. Now, yet again, we're looking at the Truck Series here. In the Cup Series, there's a much more even spread in terms of speed for the series. So if you're looking at the Cup Series, for example, you'll see fast laps and finishing positions spread out more. Okay, but since we're looking at Truck Series, since there's practically different levels of equipment, we're seeing a lot of these focused up front. Okay, as we move over to look at place differential, now this is a visualization of where people have performed in these races or at races that are similar. Yet again, finishing position, we don't need similar races in terms of laps to understand finishing position. That's important for dominator analysis for DK scoring. Okay, when we're looking at similar track types and we're focusing on just place differential, we don't need we don't need tracks that have the exact same amount of laps led or the amount of laps in the race. Okay, so what we're looking at here is obviously this is 0-0 finishing position, starting position. So obviously, if you are back here in the starting position and you're green, that means you finished very well. So here, for example, let me move down because I know my head is in the way here. So like here, for example, you can go through and look at what each of these blips are, what driver, what race they were at. So this is Corey Heim, started 33rd, won the race at Kansas in 2024. Okay, Ross Chastain, Parker Kligerman, Nick Sanchez, Tricon, and we have Las Vegas, Kansas, Darlington in here, Texas in here, and this indicates that, hey, at intermediates, if it's a good driver in the field, which good obviously has a lot of asterisks around it. If we look at the bottom, what are those asterisks? Good equipment, good team, so on and so forth. Like if you're not a bum team and you start in the back of the field, you have a very high likelihood of scoring a lot of points, and this can be visualized very easily through here. As long as if we keep going up, you're going to notice that like, hey, we have less of the chalk PD of the good plays and stuff, and then we start getting like the tier, kind of like tier 3 drivers, Timmy Hill, Brett Holmes, Matt Jaskell, and G2G Racing started 33rd, finished 23rd in a race at Vegas, and so we're able to see kind of where people are finishing these races. Vice versa, you can see where people have done to where they've finished. Who's calling me, dude? Hold on. In the same vein, obviously we're looking at, starting position number 1, and we look at all the people who start on pole in these races, and we're able to see where they finished. Now, obviously, the bigger the red and stuff, the worse they performed. Obviously, if you're down here, now yet again, this has to be a situation to where, Kyle Busch started first, finished first. Jake Garcia started first, finished second. Corey Heim started first, finished third, so on and so forth. And we're looking at all these races. Like, obviously, this is 2025 Homestead, this is 2022 Homestead, but you get an idea of where these people were. You go to situations up here to where you basically had lap leaders run into issues, and you're able to see where these guys are. Now, the reason why it's shown this way is, yet again, if we're looking at, if you're previewing a race or looking forward at a race, and you see that, maybe you're going on the race in reference, or you're looking at different spreadsheets and you're just looking at starting position and finishing position and stuff. I think this shows that data point in a much greater way. I think it shows you kind of the distribution of different tiers of drivers or caliber of drivers and teams and stuff. And then you also look at the, we then look at, kind of where we're at here, and we notice that we're averaging, for the most part, in this field, because we typically have guys who qualify poorly and stuff. We look at place differential versus losing, change, or the distribution of changes, whether you're losing positions or gaining positions, and we are seeing that in this series at these tracks, we're typically gaining more positions than we're losing on average, due to the fact that we have a lot of situations of guys gain a lot of situations. Like there's been, obviously one count of, getting 51 points, getting 48 and stuff. But once you go down, we see 41, 27, 25. We're seeing a lot more distribution of gaining positions than losing spots and stuff. Um, Actually, no, it'd be the other way. Uh, Not 57. This is like the amount of times the amount of times drivers have gained one position. We've seen that 57 times. We see place differential of 2, 51 times. We see place differential of 3, 48. 4, 49. 5, 48. 6, 32, so on and so forth, and stuff like that. So I misspoke there a little bit. We see change by starting position and stuff like here. We then look at the biggest movers. Who were these drivers? So you can see what tracks they were at. You can see where they started, where they finished, what their final place differential was, what their names were, and so on and so forth. We then move on to DK scoring ranges. Okay, and so this is the actual DraftKings distribution by fantasy rank of at the end of a slate. You know, the person who scored the highest is ranked number one. The person who scores second highest, ranked number two. The person who scores third highest, ranked number three. We can then look at those and see where they are in terms of scoring and stuff. And so yet again, obviously we know the highest scorers are going to be scoring very well, but maybe you want to see, we always say, or at least I've been focusing more and more so on, like, hey, we want to play guys who can at least score us 40 points, in certain situations. Why is that? Well, if you want to be the 10th highest scorer on DraftKings at races like this, and if we're trying to get into the 10th range, what is that scoring looking like? Minimum, you're probably going to need 38 points. Max is 46. Median is right at 41.73. If you want to be a top 10 scorer, we're looking to try and score 43 points, and so on and so forth. So you can visualize that here. You can then look at the scoring components breakdown of these situations. Is there a lot of place differential, or is place differential, really being, really important here, or is it more so, finishing position and stuff? We're noticing that, dominator points really falls off after the first three positions. Obviously, you have the main leader, second guy, third guy past that. These are pretty much just scraping off fast laps and laps led. You can then look at the highest fantasy scorers in these races here. Okay, you can look at total points. You can see their, obviously, place differential point, dominator points, finish, starts, laps led. I mean, obviously we have everything here. The amount of dominator points that they carried in this race here, and yeah, we're able to look through and see where these guys are at in these races here. We look at track performance here. Now, yet again, this is not the discussion or time for it. And yet again, I'm kind of tight on time here. I apologize. I'm kind of rushing through this stuff. But the driver rating that NASCAR made, in different people's opinions, I mean, I think everybody has a gripe about it some form or fashion. This is how Astukas looks at stuff, and I think it's a much better way than just looking at driver rating. That's the data point that NASCAR gives to us. I think that we can find much better data points. This is a example of one of those situations here. So not only are we having, if we're looking at the amount of races here, so yet again, we're looking at Texas races here. We're looking at, obviously, average finish, median finish, best finish here. But what I really like here is the amount of top 5%. This means the amount of laps spent in the top 5 positions, the amount of laps spent in the top 10 positions, amount of lead lap finishes here, the average dominator points, max dominator points, and so on and so forth as we go around. Speed ranks is the data point that Astukas uses over the default NASCAR driver rating that he feels is more accurate and stuff like that. We look at team performances and we're able to see where these teams perform. Obviously, driver. I mean, it's not self-explanatory if you just jump in, but you can read. I don't have to read everything to you. Driver speed rank gives you an idea of where everybody is at in these races here. Obviously, where the teams are in terms of, whether it's dominator points or team speed rank or whatever it is here. 2025 performance is his version, or Astukas' version of recent form. Kind of how I, have my own recent form. This is how Astukas looks at it. Yet again, same thing. For like track performance is the performance that they have had at Texas. 2025 performance are similar tracks that we've seen this year. Yet again, so on and so forth. Same thing up here. I would focus on the amount of laps spent in the top 5 and the amount of laps spent in the top 10 as your main data points. And when we're looking at a situation right here, and then same thing here, we have it for the team, driver, breakdown. So obviously, Corey Hyman has been annihilating the field. Speed rank and so on and so forth yet again. Now, that's available for both or for all three series, okay? I think this gives you a lot more tools than just looking at a spreadsheet. Now, there are good spreadsheets out there. There are bad spreadsheets out there. This is, trying to solve that situation of maybe you want to see more, maybe you want to be able to quickly get to more stuff without having to, open up an Excel file or go into Google Drive or going and bouncing through between Racing Reference and different websites out there. This is a way that you can, find what you're looking for these races. As we continue on, the next tool that we're going to talk about is the NASCAR Lap Analyzer. Okay, so what this solves is if you had been pulling data, or if you had been focusing on where people had ran in races, or whatever the case may be, okay, yet again, maybe you want to see how somebody performed at a racetrack, and you go to Racing Reference, you go to their driver, or however you get to the data point that you want to look at, and you then see a race that is showing, driver started here, driver finished here. Well, what did they do in that race? Okay, this is an attempt to solve the issue of having to go through and either now you can't still go back and rewatch races. You can see where things are, but this is an attempt to visually make it easier for you to see how people are doing and so on and so forth. And so, for example, what we're going to do here. Now you can pull from any of the series. You can pull from any of these years here that we're looking for. You can go by track by track. We'll just go ahead and take a gander at the Truck Series race at Rockingham, as that was the last race that we did. These are available as soon as NASCAR makes the results official in their website or in their database and stuff. And so if you click on Rockingham, or you click on the race that you want to see, you're going to see, obviously the race name, track, scheduled lap, all this data here. You'll see races completed, 35 drivers in this race. You can then go to race results, okay? Now yet again, same thing that you would find on Racing Reference or other situations here, but it's also everything we're looking at in terms of Astukas' speed rank that he's looking for, average run position, fast laps, laps led, important for DK points, okay? Laps led percentage in the race, fast lap percentage in the race, okay? That's all DraftKings oriented, okay? We then have running in the top 3%, or running in the top 3 positions, that percentage, running in the top 5, top 3 fast laps, top 5 fast laps, the DraftKings points. So if you want to see how somebody scored on one of these races, this is where they're at, and then the DK rank in terms of scoring. Okay, and that's just on here, and you can look through, and then this is your data point. Now, when we get to situations like, for example, the 66 is empty. That's Luke. 22. Like now, this is yet again pulling from NASCAR. Okay, so sometimes we have late driver changes. For example, with the 22. Swapped here with Reum. There's situations to where sometimes NASCAR, their driver ID conflicts with another driver, and or we had a late driver swap, whatever it could be, after the entry list was thrown in there. This is on NASCAR side, not on our side. You'd see the same thing if you pulled the data raw from NASCAR as well. Sometimes they have data missing on their end. This is not on ours. So like we could still see, the 66 for ThorSport. We just don't have the driver's name here, but that is on NASCAR. So what you could do is, for example, if you want to see how somebody did in this race, let's just say how did we'll look at the number 13 for Garcia. He started up front. Maybe we want to see how he performed in this race. So not only will it bring up the driver summary of what he did in this race very quickly, you can then see where he was at in this race. Okay, the yellows indicate where yellows came out. Okay, the stars indicate where the fast laps were that this individual got in these races. Now, we do have a situation to where the way we read the data does sometimes miscategorize fast laps if it's a driver on the or off the lead lap. So for this section here, there might be situations like if somebody goes a lap down who's a fast guy, like for example Kyle Larson, or like a fast car and they get trapped a lap down or whatever, it'll show them scraping off fast laps post the fact, or like because obviously they're on a separate lap or whatever. But for the most part, if we're looking at guys on the lead lap, this will be very, very accurate. What you can also do is get up to 6 guys on here. So maybe you want to see, yet again, driver ID 4491, whoever that was driving the O2 car. You can see how they performed. You can see how Corey Heim. Let's go ahead and just kind of go through and see where all the fast guys were at. Daniel Hemrick. Let's see where Grant Enfinger was, and we can see, and you can go and see where all these drivers performed in this race. Were they able to get up through the field? Were they able to not? Whatever the case may be, so on and so forth. This is a tool that'll help you understand where these drivers were in one individual race, instead of just looking at average running position or median running position, whatever the case may be. This is attempting to solve that situation here. I believe this is the most important tool that we have, and it's going to save you a ton of time. If you're wanting to go back and forth between where these people are at, or if you want to compare where people are at similar track types, or whatever the case may be, being able to visibly see where these guys are at without using or being in a spreadsheet that has, tons of rows of column. Obviously, we start A, B, C, D. Well, if you ever pulled lap data and stuff like that, you'll understand that you'll be at like row, GH, by the time we're done, when we have like 300 laps or whatever, right? So this helps you visualize it in a much more easier way to see and stuff like that. We then look at the fast laps analysis. Now, yet again, sometimes drivers off the lead lap scrape off a fast lap and stuff, but for the most part, this stuff I would Sukas and I have agreed that it's about 95% accurate, and it gives you a good idea of where obviously these are at. So obviously it's showing that a lot of the fast laps are coming from the top 5 situations here. Obviously this is Stephen when a yellow came out, back up to green, but we have a Ben Rhodes here. We have driver here who scraped one off, who yet again just isn't in the database. Obviously crafted here. I think this one's pretty accurate here. I don't really think we're running out of situation here, but we're seeing who set the fastest laps in terms of where they were at, whether it was a leader, driver in the top 5, driver in the top 10, not top 5, so on and so forth. A lot of good data points here, and then you can go through and actually look through every single lap and see the speed that they were at, the running position, the finish position of that driver, so on and so forth. Okay, now going on to the contest review tool, which yet again, now if you've had a tool or looked at tools and stuff that allow you to look at how a CSV performed, or not a CSV, a contest performed, maybe it has stuff, or maybe it has situations to where you want it to show more, or whatever the case may be. So what you can do is you can take the contest standings, and you can do this live or when they're final. Let me go ahead and get this. Now, I went ahead and just thrown in the Xfinity Talladega $10 GPP in here. If it is a smaller contest like the 4, the nickel, a single entry contest, it'll load a lot more. Obviously, we're having to load a lot of data in here, a lot of rows of data and stuff like that. So it'll take 1 to 2 minutes at most. I've never had it take more than that. And what it'll show you in this is, first and foremost, this contest analysis tab. It shows you the amount of users that are in this contest, okay? And yet they are described right here. So large multi is anywhere from a 101 lineups to 149. You have your 150 guys, your medium from 21 to 100, your single entry players, and your 2 to 20, okay? You can see that there is one person in this contest who played 101, or between 101 and 149. You had 24. 150 guys, 53, medium, and so on and so forth. You can then see their percentage of the contest. You can then see their total entries. Okay, so this guy here entered 107 lineups, categorized here, so on and so forth. And so past that, we can then see the most duplicated lineups right off the bat. We can see the amount of lineups that they had. We can see the amount of usage that they had. You can see the drivers and so on and so forth. This saves you a lot of time. If you ever pulled the CSV and you throw it in Excel or Google Sheets or whatever, you just have the contest there. You don't have to make formulas or put in your own tools or plugins or whatever to get data that you want from it. Here, we don't have to do that anymore. It automatically does it. We look at driver combinations, okay? And yet again, this shows the amount of most common driver combinations. So right now I click 2. You can go anywhere from 2 to 6, although 6 is going to be, the main lineups. But, for example, if you want to see the highest combination of drivers of any 2 drivers, Ryan Sieg and Sam Mayer accounted for nearly 40% of lineups. These 2 were together. Then you had Poole and Sieg, Harrison Burton and Sieg, Poole and Sam Mayer. You can see where these guys are at. What you can do is you can have an idea of where cores lined up and stuff. So like say we can look at the And obviously an error occurred because I typed in a number and then hit enter, so it changes and stuff. But we can then see, like, basically, hey, what cores were most used in this? You know, what amount of 4 drivers and combinations were used in this contest, okay? You can then look at your personal analysis, okay? So if you type in your name on in here, if you played that contest, it'll pull your name from the contest and it'll show you your driver exposure versus the field. It'll show, so yet again, this is a plate race, so I stacked from the back, right? Obviously, you know, whatever, one of those weeks, right? I believe I had like 8 of the 20 lines cash in there because we didn't wreck. But it'll show you your ownership. It'll show you the field's ownership. It'll show you the leverage, whether it was a good lean, whether you're over the field or under the field, and so on and so forth. Not even good as in bad or worked out. It'll just show you where you were over the field versus the field, or and where you were under the field. Okay, so that's the first part here. And obviously, I had, you know, there's 39 drivers in this race. I only played 15 people. So it'll show you, you know, the amount of times you played them, whatever the case may be. Now I run a pretty condensed player pool for plate tracks, but that's not the video for this discussion here. So we then go and look at your lineup duplication distribution. Okay, if you want to see how many, you know, lineups you had that were duplicated and where they fell in line, you know, and yet again this will vary based on the track. So you can see that I had quite a few lineups that weren't duplicated. That's pretty good. You can see that I had 1, 2, and 3 lineups that were duplicated twice, 1 lineup duplicated 3 times, and 1 lineup duplicated 4 times. So that's a pretty good distribution, and you can use this to see where you're at. Okay. As we continue up, we can then look at user comparison. Okay. So I'm just going to type in myself because obviously this is how you would use it. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and use Sheets as an example. So I can go ahead and see my entries versus Sheets' entries. Now, it doesn't have to be Sheets. Now, what is this tool using, or what is this trying to solve? Okay, maybe you're learning how to play DFS. Maybe you want to see how people are performing in races. Maybe you want to check how touts are doing. Maybe you want to check how other people are doing. Whatever the case may be. Or maybe, hey, man, so-and-so is a good player. I want to see how they're doing. What I used to do when I first started, you know, years ago, you know, 2018, 2019, is I would find players that were good NASCAR DFS players, and I'd pull their lineups and see how they were building, see what they were doing, so on and so forth. Instead of yet again pulling a CSV and throwing it in an Excel file or a Google sheet and manually doing a lot of stuff, you can, whatever the case may be, you can select users and see how they did. Okay, so we can look at the distribution. So hey, you know, Sheets did pretty good as well, not having a lot of duplicated lineups. You know, some people I'm not going to throw anything in there. I'm like, but you could search anybody. You'll see, you know, if they had more duplicated lineups, it would show up here. We can then see the distribution of ownership that you had versus, you know, other people and so on and so forth. And you can keep using as many users as here. Some things might get harder to view, but you can always, you know, left click and zoom in on a section of the grid, and you can see where people are at. So like, let's just see Kyle Seek, for example. Sheets had him in his own portfolio in lineup 16.7%. I had him in 35, so on and so forth. So you can do that and see where people are playing. You can see final results for this. Now, yet again, it's going to take just a second to load because this is loading the entire slate or the entire contest here. But and yet again, it's going to be very, very, like, you know, very quickly, and you can see how those groups that we talked about on this tab, how they performed. Okay, we can then look at the, you know, duplication level of, you know, lineups, whether, like, obviously unique lineups can perform very well or very poor, whatever the case may be, or points rather. And then obviously this is the entire you know, contest here. Okay, so obviously Nikki won the contest with, where are we at here? I just went blank. I've been talking nonstop. Anyway, this is the distribution of the contest here. And yeah, I mean, it has all the data points that you'd want to look at, right? And you can go ahead and keep going through. You can go ahead and search yourself here. So, like, for example, or me, or whatever the fuck you want to do, right? Like, I mean, it's a free country. Last time I checked, you can do whatever you want. You can search yourself or whatever, and it'll show you your highest scoring line, whatever. It'll show you the highest place that you finished, and then it'll show you the amount of like, so for example, I had 20 entries, average score 172, max score 227. I had 0 lineups that finished in the top 0.1%, top in the number 1, top in the 5, but 20% of my lineups finished in the top 20 of the contest, whatever. But you can see how people performed. Now, yet again, this is these guys had single entries. So let's find an individual who at least had more, so you can kind of see what we're doing here. Now, yet again, this seems like a pretty brutal race for guys who entered a lot of lineups, just because that's just how they are sometimes. So we're going through the contest here. Okay, so we'll just use this guy for an example. No hate or whatever towards this guy. I'm just showing what this is showing here. Oops, get off the side here. So 10 entries for this guy. You can see average score, max score, and then obviously you can see his percentage of his lineups. And again, he has 10. You can see that percentage in the top 1, top 5, top 20, whatever. And so this is just, you're able to analyze where these people performed in this situation here. And then obviously live lineups. If this is live, you can select dead lineups. Like if you want to follow along and see what lineups are still live and stuff like that, you can do that here. But that is a walkthrough of all of the TrueDFS NASCAR tools that we offer here. So I understand you might be like, man, why is the NASCAR package $40? Okay, well, it's because a lot of time and effort went into those tools for you to be able to do that. Okay, why is this so expensive? Well, because it just makes more sense for you to just pay up and have access to SaberSim and PayDirt as well versus just a NASCAR only package. Okay, that's a walkthrough of some of this stuff, and obviously you still have my NASCAR projections. Sheets' NASCAR projections. More stuff will slowly, obviously we're working on the website here, but more stuff will slowly be getting behind the paywall. So if you notice over the next couple of weeks, since we're in May now, a lot of the live shows are going to start public and then move behind a paywall. When it's behind the paywall, I can help subscribers on a much more individual level. We can analyze what SaberSim has given us, either with their default projections, my projections. We can see how builds are going, and so on and so forth. And so that is a walkthrough on the NASCAR tools. Thank you for being here, and I will see you guys next time.